Hi! Before we dive into the content, let me introduce myself. My name is Marco Bordieri and I'm originally from Italy, as you can probably tell by the accent. 10 years ago, I was hit by a major midlife crisis, and instead of buying a Harley Davidson and doing noisy laps around the block, I decided that my quest for happiness would require relocating to another country. With my IT qualification, I was offered a visa in Sydney, and I'm still grateful to Australia for the opportunity to reset my life and become an Australian citizen, fulfilling a childhood dream. And yes, I do look like a child in that picture, but you know what? I'm convinced that being shorter makes me closer to the ocean, and that may have played a role in what I'm going to talk about today. When I landed in Sydney, I had very little diving experience. I was a casual snorkeler without any clue about marine biology. Things were due to change as I started appreciating the underwater opportunities that Sydney offered, and enjoying the democratic access to the most of the dive sites, where you just walk in the water without having to deal with middlemen and boat operators. There was just a major problem left. The visibility conditions were so variable and there was no way to find any update before going diving. This was very painful as I lived in the west of Sydney and diving involved hours of driving. That's the reason why in 2019 I decided to start a Facebook group dedicated to sharing fresh conditions updates and to call it VIZ. This is our logo, depicting all 4 categories of marine lovers we address: snorkelers, freedivers, scuba divers, and speros. Basically anyone who would benefit from sharing visibility reports. Posters are rewarded by sharing their underwater experiences and associated media. Readers get fresh visibility reports and inspiration for trying new dive sites. In other words, they find where, when, and why going underwater. 2020, COVID, everybody confined to their homes with plenty of time, we started thinking at additional ways to serve the underwater community, and we came up with some ideas that expanded our scope. That's when we complemented our name with "and more." Those ideas translated into 4 goals we thought we could and should achieve. Let's have a look. Enhancing the underwater experience. This has been our core goal since the beginning. We achieve it by providing the platform for sharing visibility reports, keeping it clean and friendly, rewarding the most active members, and incentivizing sharing any useful information other than just the bare visibility meters, such as species spotted, temperature, and so on. Here are a couple of examples. The basic assumption is that conditions underwater are not going to change in a matter of hours, at least unless the weather changes drastically. And we are all getting better in understanding the direct effects of a sudden change in wind, swell, and precipitation. Now people living far from the dive sites can pick the best chances for successful experiences, democratizing access no matter where they live. A special group of stakeholders are the marine researchers who leverage this observatory to learn about what's happening below the waterline and can focus their research funds into selective field work. This is the magnet that attracts 13,000 underwater enthusiasts around Sydney, and it's also the engine that unlocks everything that will be presented today. One of the reasons we asked to mention species cited is our curiosity to understand whether their presence displays any seasonality. But having that information is not enough if it's not harvested. So we looked at the feed of visibility reports, and instead of leaving them scrolling down into oblivion, we started classifying them. Turtle sightings were the most intriguing, as we could use their scales as fingerprints and identify individual specimens. So we started collecting all the pictures and patiently matching them. In the last 4 years, we have classified 74 sea turtles along the 12 main dive sites in Sydney, with Cabbage Aquatic Reserve accounting for 29 of them. 80% are green turtles and 20% oxbill. One thing which is interesting is that we never found the same turtle spotted in more than one site. They often disappear for months or years, yet they manage to find the very same site across 12 possible. Now, we need to be careful not to cross the line of science and be tempted to interpret data by making hypotheses on why and where they go when they are not around. That's the job for scientists, and none of us is. We are just observers. Here is an example of one of the most residential turtles in Cabbage tree bay near Manly, across the 29 spotted in that location. With this data, we could advance knowledge from the anecdotal awareness of sometimes there is a turtle at Cabbage tree bay to having presence patterns for 29 of them. We also found that the month with the most individuals sighted is July, 4 times more than January. We would have expected the opposite in consideration to how few people go diving in winter compared to summer. Is this science? It's not, because our data is anecdotal and is not the result of rigorous survey, but it provides presence patterns that were unavailable before. It's complementary to what other entities are doing by tracking turtles with GPS tags. They analyze the migration path of selected individuals. We look at how many turtles are in our waters and where and when it's easier seeing them, which link to our goal of providing great underwater experiences. Talking of which, we are conscious that revealing the presence of some high-profile species may impact their disturbance. So we have developed a code of self-regulation which asks our members not to be specific about the location of endangered species. We also promote responsible interactions, not just with our community but with other swimmers in the area. What we have noticed is that by having published rules, you set a line that empowers witnesses to act instead of being compliant to avoid a possible conflict. A byproduct of our activities is to raise the attention on visibly sick turtles and alert volunteering organizations to rescue them. Once rescued, we follow the progress, establishing a familiarity that promotes more positive behaviors and also donations for the rescue organizations. But it's not just sea turtle that we track. There are other 9 species that we've been keeping an eye on for the past 4 years, confirming the seasonality for some species and an upper verdict for the others. Such in the case of the Port Jackson shark. People diving for years had already an idea of their seasonality, but what we added is the more precise series over the years and associated ocean temperatures, and bring it to anyone interested, whether they are long-timers or not. Another initiative in terms of innovative asset is the mapping of the main dive sites. While good description existed, maps were too approximative, being handwritten as per traditional practices, or in other cases kept confidential by the dive shops who disclosed them to customers only. With the goal of producing precise georeferenced maps, we came up with a method based on a 360-degree video camera installed on a sea scooter and a GPS recorder trailed on the surface. With the camera recording the landscape and including depth, direction and time for GPS reconciliation, it is possible to transfer on a map features such as sandlines, rocks, walls, kelp, sponges and artifacts. The most challenging mapping has been the one for Bear Island, scanning an area of 600 by 800 meters, and unveiling the rocky shelf which is 10 times bigger than the island you see on the surface. To the left, one of the many GPS tracings taken during a double dive. To the right, the final product after 25 dives and about 200 hours of work between driving, diving and computer work. The accuracy of the map is within a few meters, and by being a PDF, it can be magnified and printed as required. It's also in scale and each millimeter equals to a meter, so divers can easily plan distances and compass headings for predictable dive profiles. The idea is that having a map allows to explore further away while preserving safety limits, also in terms of knowing the effect of the tidal current and planning for it. An additional purpose of the maps is to illustrate the presence of endangered species, especially in relation to planned major developments such as the creation of an additional cruise ship terminal. Another example is Cabbage Bay. There have been frictions with boaters anchoring on the seagrass that is a primary source of food for the resident turtles. This map helped in visualizing where the seagrass is for establishing new anchoring guidelines. At this stage, all the main dive sites have been mapped, and the high-resolution files are available for download on the website. A byproduct of the mapping initiative was to discover the world's southernmost colony of Pocillopora aliciae coral, and the only one in the Sydney Harbour, according to iNaturalist as of November 2023. It was found during the mapping of the Bordieri head, and is now being used as a survey site by researchers. Since our members spend so much time underwater, sometimes they find new wrecks, and they are added to the Maritime Heritage database. We also ask our members to contribute to iNaturalist and RedMap, especially in case of rare sightings such as this 7-gill shark in the Sydney Harbour. Enhancing the public awareness on marine life. We deploy our social impact by communicating to the wider public using 3 channels: the website, the Facebook page, and the weekly segment on ABC Radio Sydney, where we bring the most interesting underwater topics to an audience of 160,000 listeners, and we've been doing it for 170 weeks. The goal is to bring familiarity with marine life, especially to the ones who are not regular divers and have no idea of what's happening down there. We believe that familiarity drives advocacy. The last goal is about leveraging the critical mass to establish a dialogue with the other stakeholders. Let's see what sort of information can be exchanged. Public entities, research, volunteering and environmental organizations can tap into the VIZ group for a number of reasons. What we ask them in return is to provide science education and collaboration opportunities for the most active members. Anything we learn, either from direct observation or by dealing with those third parties, is then distilled and shared with the general public as I described before. While we keep a healthy distance from any for-profit organization, we recognize the importance of the industry players for the products and the services we require in our underwater activities. And here are some examples of citizen science involvements in connection with research organizations. So, what have we added that wasn't there before? Well, a one-stop shop for Sydneysiders to access everything they need to advocate marine life. Scientists can market their initiative without consuming research dollars. Spearfishers are exposed to alternative ways to enjoy their underwater skills. And also a sort of union where underwater users can discuss matters not addressed by industry or public entities. And lastly, a sentinel on the status of marine life and observance to regulations. We believe VIZ is a model that could be replicated by other communities in the world. But there are some key ingredients that need to be considered. None of us earns a single dollar, as we don't sell anything, we don't ask for donations, and we are not affiliated with any business. Yet we still like to run it like a business, doing marketing, establishing partnerships, being responsive and accountable to our stakeholders. We all have a day job, but we still do our best to be professional and to leave the impression that this is what we do for a living. It brings respect and credibility. Don't settle for the status quo, or the group will lose significance and become just like any other Facebook group. As long as admins have energy and time, there are endless initiatives that can be invented and carried out. Yes, it does require consistency and time investment. Last but not least, make it fun for the admins. Focus on the most rewarding initiatives, or life will get in their way and the community will be left on autopilot, missing most of its goal. Thanks for your time and feel free to get in touch.